Ahoy! The Human Centipede, first sequence by director Tom Shitsticks. Yeah, alright. I'm breaking the normal DMR format here. Technically, this movie did its job, as awful as it is, in evoking some emotions. In that, I pity the state of horror where this is the offering. To be honest, I didn't really want to watch this movie in the first place. Nothing about it seemed interesting to me enough to see it, or even its trailer. Sure, there were some sensational things said about it, horrible things, malort level kinds of things. But how bad could it really be? So I guess my viewing of it was inevitable. I made it to 55 minutes and 35 seconds in. That was my limit. We all have limits. Accept them and move on. But it does make me wonder why a movie like this was made in the first place. So this review is more of a look into why I had such a visceral reaction to it, especially in comparison to other horror and horrific movies I've watched over the years. Is this technically a human centipede? I couldn't even make it through a dog centipede, much less a human one. At first disturbing, then full out depraved. Unfortunately, this is done surprisingly well. The actors are believable, the effects are effective, and cinematography quite competent. This isn't a B-grade schlock fest. The reality it brings to the story really makes it that much more, just disturbing. I truly question the motives behind making this kind of movie. To what purpose? It's frightening, it's gross out, degrading. I see no redemption arc here. The fact that there's not one but two sequels to this does not bode well on us as a species. I skipped through the rest of the movie quickly just to confirm my suspicions. No matter how it ends, it doesn't end well for the centipede. There is no way it can at that point. So, in questioning my reflexive reaction to this film, where at one point in the past I may have watched it through to the end, I wonder what other factors may be involved. Is it an age thing? Horror movies induce an artificial shot of adrenaline. Well, the adrenaline is real, but through artificial means, the primal survivor instinct in the brain that triggers fight or flight mechanisms or something like that. Same artificial injection can be said from, roller coasters, certain illicit drugs that rhyme with mocaine, and adventurous grumpy dumpings at skeezy gas stations after sunset. All inject us with next level adrenaline. But I guess as you get older, you just don't need to rely on the fake shit as much. Reality provides enough kicks to the groin as it is. But this one, not quite an hour into this movie, I found myself asking, what is the redeeming quality here? What makes me want to watch more of this? I think it was right around Eli Roth's torture porn extravaganza Hostel in 2005 that just turned me off the genre, even with the Takashi Miike cameo. This one is pure torture porn, dead to me now like romantic comedies starring Ben Stiller. No joy is had from those. Going back to the famous quote by H.P. Lovecraft from his short non-fictional writings in supernatural horror and literature, the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. This would explain why the horror genre is one of the most ubiquitous and varied in subgenres out there. Monster, natural, supernatural, slasher, yogurt, cosmic, sexy, Italian giallo, gothic, etc. Taking a look more into the modern horror films as studios gave way to more independent endeavors, so I kind of mark that around Romero's 1968 film Night of the Living Dead. Before that, it was mostly universal monster kinds of stories and the other side of the spectrum with the schlock of Ed Wood kinds of endeavors, so cheesy bad it's funny, or like Herschel Gordon Lewis's buckets of blood-filled 2000 maniacs. Not necessarily horrific, I would say. Alfred Hitchcock and Rod Serling's psychological headscrews did help pave the way, though, for a little extra psychological depth and social commentary, depending on the genre. But with movies like Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974, John Carpenter's Halloween a few years later, and the relatively new slasher genre those helped spawn, horror flicks definitely started off in a new, darker direction. Then there's the slightly more juvenile branch of movies, like the Friday the 13th flicks that have the three B's: beast, blood, and boobs. Usually a moral code worked in so the sexy people got done in. The asshole always gets it. But there's always that tenacious survivor or survivors. But it's only after pure demoralization. Few, if any, redeeming qualities. And honestly, the movies are such uninspired photocopies of each other, it's hard to justify watching for the few cheap thrills it may provide. Movies for bored, horny teenagers. Hell of a market to cater to, even if I was once, too, one of those very same bored, horny teenagers. But what about films like Requiem for a Dream? It's drama, but brutally horrific nonetheless. Well done themes, as dark as they are, but one and done kind of film. How much of a need to revisit that story? The ugliness of The Last House on the Left, The Silence of the Lambs, or the Austrian Funny Games, and its odd American remake directed by the same guy? That slow, intentional evil committed by humans on other humans? An illustration of the survival mechanism ramped up to 11. But at what cost? Does it inspire or demean, humiliate, and crush? Horror, like everything else, can be subjective. Like, only some people are actually afraid of clowns, while others find them either funny, annoying, or slightly better than mimes. Universal fear, though, that goes down to the primal core, the hardwiring in our brains that can't be changed. Conditioned through millennia of human evolution kind of shit. Things that make you unintentionally start if encountered unexpectedly. Thunder, snakes, midgets. Sure, you might not have a particular fear of one of these things after logically addressing them, but there are things wedged deep within the psyche that causes us to recoil, no matter who you are or where you're from. So it is interesting to see how some of those subjective horrors change with society, usually trying to take it one step further to keep some semblance of originality, and gore or jump scares or psychological fuckeries or however they want to make the hook of the film, all for the sake of entertainment. I won't get into what new horrors await, intentional or otherwise, with the rise of using artificial intelligence in writing scripts. Robots making movies for humans. That's a horror movie in itself. Ideally, the complete lack of empathy will kill the system and independent human storytellers will rise again. I think we are already seeing this in part from the dreck of original movies put out from Netflix over the last decade or so. They might not be AI written, but damn, they're close. Bland and dead inside, almost as if to condition the audience for the next wave of even shittier, uninspired claptrap. I can still appreciate a creepy story. The better it's done, the more leeway for suspension of disbelief and just go with the flow. To cheer on the protagonist, the hero's journey to overcome crazy odds against insane evil makes it that much more satisfying. The movie Scream did an interesting take on how to simplify the rules of horror. The Cabin in the Woods also did a fun logical examination on this concept, And unfortunately, the fatalistic ending kinda ruins it unless you're like a gothy, angsty teenager with limited life experience, lashing out just for the sake of it. But it is an interesting exploration of the concepts and the paradigms, all wrapped up in its own little horror film, while having fun with the Joseph Campbell archetypes. I like my horror flicks. Sometimes they don't end well, the hero doesn't always win. Let's compare to Darabont's adaptation of The Mist. It shows some horrible people acting horribly during a horrible situation. Some vicious monsters and kills. Quite frankly, pretty brutal ending. What is the redeeming value of that versus this? The will to live? Present in both. I know the characters aren't as sympathetic here with the setup, but still, nobody deserves this kind of fate. Maybe that this is intentional behavior versus a supernatural one like in The Mist, or even one that's the best horror movies ever made, John Carpenter's The Thing. That's a dark movie too. A lot of gore and fucked up shit. Not exactly the happiest of endings. What makes that arguably one of the best horror films of all time, and this, what it is. Coming back to this here human centipede, this is a mental filmatic sledgehammer. The dude does not abide. This is not a film. It's a tool to crush the human spirit. And there's sequels. So, given that I didn't actually finish watching this, I cannot rate it. My review of the live-action abomination known as Cats made me question my own integrities, so I won't do that again. Maybe. Here, even if the film was done competently, the subject matter outweighs the quality, time, or talent put into it. It's a horrible form of conditioning where evil plays out unchecked and nobody wins. Ultimately, it's an odd thing what our individual brains like and dislike, what music we prefer to listen to or clothes we decide to wear, and the choice of preferred entertainment. Entertainment. Are there people out there that would watch 2 hours of a dude kicking puppies? Yeah, probably a few, unfortunately. You might want to keep them separated from the rest of society, though. I think you may want to consider the same for those that watched all 3 of these films. It ain't right. It's like finding a half-eaten sandwich of questionable ingredients left out on a table outside a gas station with flies buzzing around it. Sure, it's food, and it has a fancy toothpick through it with some of that colored crinkle stuff on the end, but do you really want to eat it? What is actually appealing about that to you? Are you really that hungry? Is it like the only thing to eat? Or do you just walk away? Chances are very good you'll find something better and better for you if you just take a moment or two to reconsider your options. The world is sad enough with so many Steven Seagal action documentaries out there. Do we really need to subject ourselves to this kind of torture too? Hey, watch what you want, but damn, if you Clockwork Oranged my ass, I'd rather watch paint dry than sit through this or its sequels. So, yeah, I apologize to yous who wanted a complete lowdown on the human centipede for kind of going off on a tangent here. Drop a comment if you genuinely wanted to or have seen this film. What inspired you to? Or how you think the horror genre can be a net benefit? It's all subjective, so there's no wrong answers. Unless, of course, it involves listening to Kiss. Just almost the worst compared to this. Cheers. I don't know, I like Demented too. Damn.